Hey guess whatters, Bahamas Day is on July 10th and we wanted to share with you information about the tropical islands of the Bahamas in today's video. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to us. Ready? Alright, let's start the video. So let's begin when the Bahamas were first discovered. As early as 300 to 400 AD, people who traveled from what we now called Cuba lived on the islands of the Bahamas, and they relied on the ocean for food. Next, from around 900 to 1500 AD, the Lucayan people lived there, and the Lucayans enjoyed a peaceful way of life and had developed a working political, social, and religious system. But because of this peaceful nature, it made the Lucayans easy targets for enslavement when Spanish conquistadors discovered these islands. And within only 25 years, the entire population of the Lucayans was wiped out from disease as well as hardships and the slavery they experienced. There was never any attempt to settle on the islands, so when the English settlers arrived later in 1648 from Bermuda, the islands were completely deserted. The islands soon became a shelter for pirates and criminals, with only a handful of some of the new settlements growing in population. In 1670, Nassau was created as a commercial port, but was overrun by these lawless pirates. And years later, the port of Nassau was destroyed twice, once by Spanish troops, and the second was by French and Spanish navies. Soon after this, pirates began stealing from the heavily loaded cargo ships. So in 1718, the King of England elected Woodes Rogers to serve as the royal governor. Woodes Rogers' job was to restore order in this area, which he did by offering pardons to those pirates who surrendered. But the pirates who did not surrender would be hanged. 300 pirates decided to surrender, but the rest, including the famous pirate Blackbeard, fled back to sea. The islands then started to experience some development following the American Revolutionary War, when some people left the US to build cotton plantations there. Eventually, slavery was officially abolished in the Bahamas in 1838. And many former slaves stayed on the land and then became landowners themselves. And it was the Hotel and Steamship Service Act of 1898 that opened the Bahamas' doors to the world. And this act gave the government the support it needed for the development of hotels as well as steamship services. And since this time, everything from prohibition back in the 1920s that brought wealthy Americans to the island, as well as the closure of Cuba to Americans, has influenced tourism in the Bahamas. But it really wasn't until the advancement of tourism, which began after World War II, that economic success really began to happen in the Bahamas. Then the Bahama Islands started to move towards independence. That started after the end of World War II. A modern constitution, which gave more local freedoms, happened in 1964. Next, in 1967, the Bahamas achieved majority rule for the very first time. Remember, the Bahamas became a British crown colony in 718 because the British were trying to prevent piracy in that entire area. So following the American War of Independence, many British supporters moved to the Bahamas, still supporting their British connections. But the people of the Bahamas pressed on and later were awarded their own self-government in 1964, becoming an independent nation in 1973. In fact, this happened on July 10th, 1973, and ended 325 years of peaceful British rule. The national holiday of the Bahamas commemorates this day when the Bahamas became a fully independent nation in 1973. So what exactly is Bahamas Independence Day? Well, today, the day is celebrated with a week-long festival beginning on July 3rd, leading up to the official Independence Day on July 10th. And if July 10th falls on either a Saturday or a Sunday, the following Monday will be a public holiday in the Bahamas. a mix of traditional Junkanoo and carnival parades, as well as lots of fireworks shows, are just some of the highlights of these celebrations, as well as official speeches celebrating their freedom and independence throughout the islands of the Bahamas. See, the Bahamas are an awesome place, and we hope you enjoyed learning all about the islands and their history. And if you did, make sure you subscribe to us and also give us a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next Hey, Guess What?